Hello and welcome to another special guest episode. Today's guest is, if anything, one of the most intriguing minds I ever met. Extremely kind, humble, and last but not least, owner of great knowledge about American history that precedes the pre-cataclysmic event we all know as the Younger Dryas. Something still denied by academics, let's not hide it, but considering the amount of evidences now in existence that contradicts the main narrative, this is something that will change soon. His name is Chris Finefrock. He is one of the few filmmakers still in business that is interested in ancient history, whose high experience can be seen in his latest production, Lost America, that premiered on Amazon Prime on the 16th of September of this year, 2024. There are 4 episodes already available. I, individually and the Institute in general, strongly recommend you to watch them. You will be supporting a side of the cinema industry that is often neglected, and yet its interest, context, and significance far surpasses all the poor, sensationalistic, and agenda-derived productions in the area of history documentaries and in all the film industry in general. I will leave the links for the series in the description. My name is Ricardo Calvario, and without further ado, I give you Chris Finefrock. Good evening, Phil. Thank you for coming to the podcast of the Institute for Natural Philosophy. We are very grateful that you accepted our invitation. And I would ask you, Chris, a start. Tell us a little bit of who you are and what you do, and then we'll start from there, Chris. Thank you very much.
All right, Ricardo. Well, just an honor to be here. I really learned a tremendous amount from you in the few years that I've been following you. So just an honor to be here. Grew up in the kind of filmmaking type of ideas and that type of stuff, and trying to pitch some different ancient American type shows a decade ago and 15 years ago, and nobody seemed to want those. And I thought it was weird that nobody wanted the America, the Lost America type stories. Why don't these other networks, why don't any of the networks want this? I had grown up watching the History Channel and these really cool shows that were high quality scientific shows, showing outer space and everything. And, those were great documentaries and stuff, great work they were doing. And so, having some different deals with some different networks on that type of premise of show, and then them eventually falling apart. And then a decade passing and nobody had done any new shows about Lost America, Ancient America. Nobody had done that from 2010 till today. And so I basically decided to go around the country and do a lot of filming, and just met a lot of really passionate people that have spent their lives on sites, on stories, on research, on fascinating, intelligent people that are basically called pseudoscientists, and they're not. They're very smart people. So it's been so much fun. I'm just so grateful to the creator that I've been able to do this, because it's very important and very special. So thank you for letting me say hello.
Oh, it's our privilege, Chris, for sure. And of what you have been seeing, filming, studying, learning about, how would you expose the fact that America has a much ancient history that we are led to believe? What would be the key points you would bring up to show us that we need to go to another understanding of ancient America?
So it doesn't seem like people are working much on North America, which is just shocking. You go all around North America and there are sites and stories everywhere. You go to pretty much, I'm not saying every mountaintop and every bend at the river and every rock art site, but just pretty much everywhere California, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Wyoming, Oregon, you name it. You go to any of these states and you start looking around and there's stuff everywhere. And I knew that, and I know that, and I laugh whenever somebody says, I know everything and I don't need to follow you. And it's like, I can just have a nice little quiet laugh and say, you haven't been where I've been, and have a nice day.
Exactly, exactly.
And so, you know, you go to these sites. So I'm just driving the other day, and you drive down this hill, this downhill. There's a profile and it's just there. And it looks different from the other side when you're coming up the hill. But when you're driving down and you see that profile and it's facing that direction, it's a face. You know, I don't need 99.9 out of 100 to say it's just rock. It's a face. So stuff's everywhere.
And how do you how were these locations that you were just mentioning affected by the younger dryas? And I ask this because a lot of us lost for sure if all the flooding and all the rage of the waters taking everything in its path. There's not as much as could have been left because of that. But are those areas somewhat fortunate, you think, to have been saved from those cataclysmic events?
So, Ricardo, if you could teach me and teach everybody, you know, California is different than Ohio, is different than the Northeast, is different than Wisconsin. You had tribes in Wisconsin where they're living right where the glacier ended, and they were living right at, you know, looking right at that. And of course, they have stories and they remember of that melting and rushing and going all the way down. And so I guess, you know, teach me what you can about those water flows and where those, did it impact the entire United States? Obviously, that was different than all of Europe and Russia. So it's, I mean, tell me what you're thinking.
Well, what we know is that there were two continental ice shelves. I don't know the names. I think it's the Laurentine on the west coast, and then the major one up to 2 miles in high of ice in all the one up Hudson Bay. I think that's the name. So a little bit down, 100 kilometers, a few hundred kilometers down, or a few hundred miles, if you wish. There was this massive shell of ice, and you say there were Indians looking at it just like a scene from Ice Age when they have that massive wall of ice. So it's even if it was a calamity joining a solar burst, a comet, volcanology that happens always after big impacts, and so on, even putting all that in the same package, I think that the people that live there would have some form of forewarning of what's impending, because having that massive, even if that massive wall of ice was there for 1,000 years and they lived by it in peace, it wouldn't crumble in the second. So they would have time to, at least some of them, to move to higher ground or take precautions and pass on what they have learned. But those messages from the native people have not reached us because of the demise that was done to the Native American people by the immigrants that now are the Americans. I'm not trying to offend anyone, I'm just saying it as it is, because they were first there. I'm not saying that they were the first, but they were first there for sure. So do you know about these histories? Can you tell us about these legends of these native people that remembered the times and how they...
Yeah, because just you're dealing with when you go to all these sites and they're everywhere and you're looking at the rocks and you're looking at the stuff, and you know, is that the current Indians or is it some group before that? You know, a Lemurian offshoot around the rim of, you know, the whole Pacific, you know, Asia all the way North America. It's like there's stuff all there. So that's before, even though the Chumash has stories 11,000 years ago and a site right there that they have stories about, is this stuff before that? And so there was just a Mayan shaman that went up to the Wisconsin area, and I mean, these are very intelligent people, and so they have stories. The Mayans have stories of coming up to Wisconsin and coming down, and it's just no big deal. It's just that's their truth. That's their stories that they traveled, not just Georgia. That's outrageous that they could have gone to Georgia, but that they were sailing the rivers. I mean, you didn't walk through the prickly trees, and you went right on the water. And so that's the big secret that I learned, that still 15 years later has gotten less traction than it did, which is diffusion, which is these waterways were not barriers. They were ocean, or they were highways. Kentucky has more linear waterways than it's second to Alaska in the whole country. Anywhere in the US, east of the Rockies, you can get right to Kentucky, all over Kentucky, rivers everywhere, rock art everywhere, caves everywhere, mummies, burials everywhere. But nobody talks about Kentucky. So the Mayans basically have stories that they went up to Wisconsin. Their story is that they started in Wisconsin as Aztlan and basically went south. Took them 200 years to finally find their homeland that they wanted to for sure, be. But that's their story. So, yeah, forgive me for jumping around, but so the tribe up in Wisconsin has a story that they lived at the base of a glacier, and they piled all of these rocks in the shapes of different animals, all over Wisconsin, effigies in the shape of earthen mounds, but also rocks, big whales, a big whale. I've been to these places, a big thing of rocks the size of a school bus with a blowhole, and, all of the clan symbols, the bear, all of them, they're in the shape of rocks, these effigy rocks. And so there's stories of living right there. And it's just been quite a wild ride. If you ask these people, they'll generally tell you, but it doesn't seem that the archaeologists ask any of them, and no wonder they hate them. So thank you, Ricardo. Where can we go to? Where do you want to jump around to?
Sure. Do you, when you go to those sites, do you take any sort of measurements? So it's just observation. Are you accustomed to visit those sites with people with extra sensitivities that can detect, for instance, energies or something like that?
So I'm very excited to work with you, Ricardo. So there's these vortex sites, and they're real. And can you share anything about vortex sites, or do you think that's crazy? Or
no, I can. Just give me a second.
And that this energy, you can literally store it in a bottle, and it's there, and it's real, and there's many of them, but they're dismissed as just nothing. But these mounds were precisely placed at key spots with high energy, as you know.
So I'm gonna share a window. So this would be a general map. Not sure if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So this was supposedly, according to the myth, drawn on a napkin on a restaurant after a conversation and then put properly into paper. And you can see North America. I'm not sure if you can see there, but the lines that go on top of North America for sure will lead us to sites that are of interest for sure. But if I go, for instance, for a more specific, do you know Colorado?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is completely devoted to Colorado. As soon as it opens. Okay, I'm already there. So this book,
Uh,
I have a few of these dedicated to several states. I'm not sure if I share them with you or not, but they are completely dedicated to the lines and the structures that you can find, for instance, St. Louis Valley. Not sure if you know any of these places. So you have Keystone, you have the Nalt Monument, you have the Greeny Mountain, the Pagosa Springs. There's a lot of strange artifacts and monuments around these areas that are then discussed here. So I was just mentioning this because I believe you have a special connection from your collection and so on with the Native American people, and they were for sure sensitive of where to camp, field changes in the Earth grid according to their shamans of their people that understand these things, and that governs somehow their lives, and that has been lost. That culture of understanding nature and its many signs, read them, interpret them, and know how to act accordingly has vanished from our culture. Now we have Twitter or news in television, or and how can you give us a view of their perspective in this aspect?
you're exactly right that they're trying to figure it out also. So even the ones that are as much in the know on the Native American side as they're still trying to figure out. And so that's why they're bringing Mayan shamans up saying, we've got these sites, these mounds. We have eagles that are a quarter-mile long. You know, they're all in precise alignments, just talking millions of mounds across the US, but hundreds of thousands in this state, 100,000 in this state, just mounds in the shape of. And so why did they put so many of them up in Wisconsin? And the reason is one of the main reasons is the copper that they extracted there in ancient times. And so this is just, as soon as you mention to any archaeologists that they traveled on the oceans before Columbus and before the Vikings, they lose their minds. It's quite something interesting to watch. It's, you know, you want to try to teach people and help people, but if they're not open to learning anything new, then that's just how it is. But they were extracting so much copper in ancient times up in the UP, and we're talking 7, 8, 9,000 years ago. So we're not just talking the Phoenicians, 1200 BC, and their industrial scale. And so ask the natives that were living there, ask them, what did they say? And they say, we didn't do that work. We didn't, we didn't work in copper, like, because so much was extracted. We're talking estimates up to a half of a billion tons. A lot of it float copper right on the surface. A lot you mine it out, but you put it on these ships, you sail it over, and you fuel the Bronze Age. And so that's quite a crazy thing to hear. You may disagree, but you have to dig into the story. I've been working on that story for 15 years, Ricardo. So.
And do you have any trade routes? Do you either internal or external? Do you have any idea of the boats equipment that they have? Technology, was it sail with wars? They use currents. What was their strategy to transport? How big were those boats? Because I ask this because of this. China, the Portuguese is well known for being leaders in the maritime exploration in the 1500s.
Yep.
And we're led to believe that they were very well accepted by the African people on the Indian Ocean by grace of God. But if you dig a little bit, you'll find that the Chinese had, from the year zero, or maybe further back, but at least from year zero, they have these things called the treasure ships that were the size of the biggest cruise ships you can find today. 300 meters, 400 meters, 500 meters long. So you put a caravel next, a Portuguese caravel next to these ships, and it will look like a small rubber boat.
Yeah.
So they were sailing all over the world, and this is in reports in Chinese. They were sailing all over the world, and they were called treasure ships because they were accompanied by many, 10,000 ships, sometimes smaller ones accompanying the big one. So, and when they got to each area that they dock it, they give people presents: gold, silver, copper, clothing, food. They give this to these people, and that's why they are called the treasure ships. And when the Portuguese arrived there, they thought, "Ooh, it's the legends of the Chinese are alive. They are coming back and they are going to give us stuff." They didn't realize that the Portuguese did give them something at the beginning, worthless stuff like small necklace and something like that. But they were eager to see if more was to come, and what was to come was total control over their territory. But that's how they were fooled, because the Chinese did it from the year zero, that they travel all over the world, perhaps even taking copper from where you are saying. And afterwards, before about 300 years before, they repeated it. So it was quite well alive in the minds of the natives in the African coast, that there exists someone that comes from time to time and offers us gifts. So this is not to prove that, but it proves that there was global maritime exploration way before than is declared to us. And I'm very intrigued with what you have to say about that one on copper.
Well, there's a lot. So this is the big secret, Ricardo. This is the big answer, is that they traveled on the oceans, no problem. That's what you're looking for. That ties it all together. And so the Chinese, definitely before Christ, Buddhist, 2000 BC, the main crux of perhaps what you're speaking of is Zheng He, 1420s, 1430s with the treasure ships. I know a lot about that. It's a big story. So the Chinese, one thing, they supposedly did not come to America for the iron. They came for the iron. What is it? The lead, the silver, the gold. That a lot of these groups came here for gold, for silver, copper. But because I think China had a lot of the copper. But the story with Zheng He, and I don't know how far it's just, a lot of people haven't heard this stuff, so they instantly dismiss it because, oh, that couldn't possibly be true. Oh, well, there's 10 books written about it, and here they are. And Ricardo, your work is masterful in just indexing and copying these books and these journals. This is like, you'd be a big hero to me. You are a big hero to me, what you're doing. So it's, did Zheng He, with his, you're talking ships that are a football field long, 300 feet, 350.
The later ones, the second
and
generation.
The treasure ships in the middle, around this big fleet of, and so they sailed all around the world spreading tribute, where you give, what is it, a little more than what you receive? Is that right? Or is it the other way around? That one. And it was basically, it was saying that China's in charge, that we have power over you. We control you, every region. They went to Venice and talked to the Doge. And so that's crazy. It's like, it's crazy to hear that. But you're also dealing with India being, that's the big secret of ancient seafaring, ancient culture, India. I mean, my goodness. So, that's that whole area, into China, but really India, Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient seaport, multiple books by Shaman Lal on Hindu America, Indians coming and ruling America, just, bunch of books on it. But the story with the Chinese is that they didn't intend what happened, that they were spreading this tribute around the world, basically saying, we're in charge, we control everybody. But then something went really bad. And then they went inward. they said no more voyages. All the trees in Thailand were denuded from all of these ships that they created. The mandate of heaven had been lost because there was total destruction of this 1430s fleet around the world. A comet impact, other things. But they then turn inward to China. They, for hundreds of years, all the way until today, they were this big world power showing everybody, and they literally, after this 1430s disaster, they turned inland and haven't gone back. So it's pretty interesting. We'll get to the copper story soon, Ricardo. Anything else?
Sure. Sure. I'm now showing the size of the second wave of ships, the one they're talking about, comparing to a small caravel, so people can see the difference between the ships.
It's overwhelming. That's a great picture. The Columbus's ships. So Ricardo, the copper story is that there was so much copper in the UP, and it was just lying there on the surface. So that's the first that they removed, right? And it's not the natives doing the work. The natives allowed these groups to come in, extract it. They allowed that to happen, is their story. So believe their story or not.
But why did they allow it? Since they were so protective of the land, that's why I'm just inquiring.
Because there was no problem. The Phoenicians come in 1200 BC. That's just one of these times that they did a tremendous amount, hundreds of millions of tons of copper. They were cool with the Phoenicians doing that because they didn't need it. They didn't use it. It was not a big deal to them to have a peaceful group that would come in the summer months, do this massive extraction process, totally leave right on that date in the fall in the UP. There's that date and you leave, otherwise you're going to have to stay up there and you're going to be buried in 14 feet of snow. So there's that date. You got to leave. You got to head south. And it wasn't a big deal that they were fueling the Bronze Age with this copper. They were peaceful with these people.
Yeah. So you think that it was not something that we might compare to mining extraction today, with large machines destroying the environment and so on. It's just a group of people with pickaxes taking bits of copper and carrying them to a ship.
Yeah, it's just imagine hundreds of Phoenician ships, or thousands. Just imagine hundreds or thousands.
Full time
in those summer months.
No, through time, not all at the same time. Through time.
Yes. And so no problem going up the Mississippi and and then bringing that copper down to Poverty Point, smelting it there. 99% has been unexcavated. You put that into ingots at Poverty Point, and then you sail it over, and they used that during the Bronze Age. There's so much bronze over there in Europe and the Mediterranean, in all of the museums and in the back rooms. There's so much bronze. There's nobody that can tell you where all that copper came from. It came from North America. It's just a fact.
And can we find any quarries still today?
I've been to many of them up there. They're the historic shafts and mines. They put those right on top of the ancient ones. They're doing a dig right now on an ancient site that's 7,000 BC, and they're extracting copper right there. So yeah, they're all around there.
Okay. So it's not a massive area that we can see everything was taken off. It's just small areas with shafts.
Well, I would say look at Isle Royal and perhaps do a LiDAR, and you'll see so many pits. They stopped counting the pits in the 1800s at 1,000 because that was what they were told. Stop counting when you hit 1,000. There's so many pits all up there in the UP of just where they extracted these big chunks of copper, load them on a ship, take them south, smelt it down to ingots, go over to Europe and the Mediterranean. No problem. Easy.
True. And do you think it's from that time that Europe has been mowing on the idea that there was a lot of gold in South America, for instance, because they saw it when they were extracting the copper, or
This stuff goes so much farther back. So when I'm saying, and I'm learning every day, Ricardo. So the Phoenician story is 1200 BC, 800 BC, like this time period. And did Solomon, was he extracting gold and silver? It seems that he was. But you're dealing with stories that are so much farther back than just that. So who are these people 6000 BC, 8000 BC that are mining copper in the UP? That's a separate group. So this was known to the world. This was not a secret, North America. This was known to everybody. So what do you do, Ricardo, if you have a secret that makes you a billionaire, and you're a good billionaire, not, got to do ruthless things to be one. But if you have a secret that makes you the Bill Gates of the time, which Joseph of Arimathea was the Bill Gates of that time. He controlled the tin mines of, southern Wales or England, all the tin, was Joseph of Arimathea. So if you're that type of wealth and you have that type of secrets and you control that many ships, why would you tell anybody your routes? You wouldn't tell anybody. It's the big secret that you're keeping with your trusted team on this very simple route. And so the ocean currents are super easy to sail. It's super easy.
So you think that is one justification for the fact that maps were so secretive back then, even when just before the return to the maritime explorations. That's the reason, because the knowledge was none. For instance, they have the Peary maps, but you have several others, the Peary being the most known. So those are the fragments that from those previous times that you are mentioning that were being copied, reunited, gather a piece there, a piece there, let's put it together, let's find out what these people were talking about, and let's see what these lands that we used to know, or those people used to go there and take precious materials from there, let's see if we can find them all secretly. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. So without trying to change too much the subject, I realize you do a lot of filming, right? So what you have been filming lately?
Well, thank you, Ricardo. I'm just fascinated with people. I'm fascinated with how smart people are, how people can focus on certain niches and follow certain lines of truths, and in the face of everybody saying they're a quack or stupid or an amateur, or these people are so smart that I have met and that I know and that are my friends. they're older than me, so their brain retention is much better than me. So I know, Ricardo, you're of course not older, you're certainly younger, but just amazing brains. And you needed to remember things more, these 50, 60, 70, or you had to remember things more than you do now. So you just wouldn't believe what I'm blown away by normal people, just human beings that can follow what they think is right, and they pursue it, and they figure it out, and then nobody asks them about it their whole life, and then they die, and that knowledge gets fully lost with them, because no one cares. So I find the people fascinating that work on this stuff, and I like sharing the people.
Sure. And I believe you have a fair good collection of ancient reports of this, so ancient books are printed anymore. And are you intending to do something with them? Are you going to put it on a museum? You're going to digitalize them for other people to see? What are you intending to do with your collection?
Well, Ricardo, I would love to ask you, teach me, what have you done with just your process at the Institute? Thousands of books, hundreds, can you teach me what you're doing? And then
Well, it's around 300,000. but has some academic papers, some books that can be more recent. A few of them are older or even rare, but those, most of them was not me doing the actual scan. So I probably did scan perhaps 5% or even less of those. I did get some special authorization to have them scanned on the place. That's why I have, for instance, excellent copies from Dresden Codex, or from the Vinis manuscript, or books like that, that I got someone that got me a good quality scan that is not available normally. But your case is different because you have them physically, right? So you have to scan them, right? So
But did you have to scan somebody had to scan all of your work?
someone had to scan all of those books, yes.
And aren't a lot of them digitally available?
Well, I would put perhaps 70% of them should be digitally available on purchase, on some form of payment. Really, I believe about 35% of them are easily found on the internet with good, reasonable scans. But it's we would like further on to actually translate them into physical again. So our purpose in the institute is, when we have the actual university working, to have a library where we're going to print all these books from the database and all these articles and have them physically so that people may access on the library on the institute.
Well, then that would make us very, very close friends, Ricardo, which we already are. But so I have spent years, 15 years, buying as many archaeological journals as I can. I wish I could afford them all. I can't. But I've just bought a lot of them. And I was the only person buying these, Ricardo. Nobody seems to have bought any of the, I was the only person buying archaeological journals. It's so weird. But we know a guy in northern Alabama, a professor, very respected archaeologist, and he is not able to access journals from the Tennessee, either Anthropological or Archaeological Association journals. He in Alabama is not able to access their journals from the 90s or whenever.
It's ridiculous, yes.
Well, I know it's a big deal. So,
it's like in a lab. You are in a lab studying something, but you have 20 people with petri dishes and syringes preparing a solution of something that they don't know what it is, because each of the 20 of them that are sitting in a row have only a part of what is being studied or produced. So no one knows what they're doing. And here is the same thing. If we don't allow even academics to access a vast array of documents wherever they are, as long as they are available for their own research, how can we get the answers without the multidisciplinary view of whatever we are studying? So it doesn't make any sense. If you want to progress in knowledge, you have to access all you can. So, and that's why I think it's very valuable, your collection, because as I have been seeing, some of them are even not from materialistic academics, but from natural philosophers. That's what they were before we get to materialism. And that's why I think they are very precious. Your collection, actually, to me, very precious. And the fact that some of the authors themselves give you those books, as I recall, it shows that you have all the respect for the material that you are collecting.
Well, thank you, Ricardo. Moments I've learned where I'm just flabbergasted. One was that, where you can't get a journal in Tennessee. It's like, what? But when I learned incredible rock art sites in Kentucky, and I was like, well, did Robert Pyle, Dr. Pyle, who was the West Virginia state, archaeologist and head rock art guy there, has he been here to Kentucky? It's like, he did. He tried to help. He was a very good, important guy, Dr. Pyle. But no, they don't cross state lines. Kentucky and West Virginia. It's like somehow that was another moment. But just they don't have an interdisciplinary approach, as you say, in combining multiple different, so it was just what you said. That was beautiful. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
including the native people. They should be heard on these subjects. They should be heard. Who has the
I'm
knowledge after all? They have. If they don't have it,
I wanted to, make a, a comment or whatever. Like, you showed something that's so obvious that it's been manipulated. These big rocks on top. I am not talking about the Montana megaliths. Those obviously look very special, but this stuff's everywhere. Somebody just this morning was talking to me about the Rockies being so special. You brought up Colorado, so I'd never seen any of that before today. But just forgive me for jumping around a little bit.
sure, go on. No worries, no worries.
But yeah, Ricardo, just there's something amiss. It'll come to me in a sec. So
Take your time, no worries.
so I have people that wrote about the Azores being a key launching spot. You follow precise latitudes, and that was a stopping point. Another guy, Sam Osmanagic, doctor in Bosnia, he wrote a book on all the pyramids around the world. I mean, that book is just filled with, there's so many pyramids around the world. And, so these people get beaten up pretty good. Squire and Davis, Lewis and Clark, Rafinsky, their names get, once they get thrown in the mud while they're living, and then they die, and then they're further thrown in the mud, and their reputation's destroyed forever. These archaeologists, they obviously ignore, so that's their big way to do it, is just ignore. Just ignore is it seems to work really well for them, but it doesn't seem they're going to be able to do that forever, Ricardo, with social media and TV now. It's like, what do you think is going to happen, Ricardo? You think they can keep these lies going? I mean, I saw something this morning, and there's like 5 main archaeologists that do, on Twitter and Facebook. There's like 5 of them, and that's it. There's 5 of them that don't do any research on North America. All they do is talk negatively about it. So you're a lot of people against 5. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think that thanks to the work as someone close and somewhat connected to the Institute, like Michael Collins, that is the Wandering Wolf, that is doing very good documentation of North America effigies and walls and megalithic structures that are completely within the wilderness and that no one cares. And when someone does, and there is some academic that knows them, the access is very restricted. They don't want anyone to go there. And this is perhaps a good reason, because as I've been seeing here, for instance, in our last tour, we went to Sintra, following the footsteps of the Templars, and we found places that I knew from my youth. There are beautiful rock sites, not construction, but beautiful geological, morphological structures on the mountain that are now completely destroyed by, let's put it, cheap black magic symbols and effigies that they draw on the stones, and a lot of mystics on the wrong side of life doing those things that happen to destroy the actual energy of the site, or use it to their own purposes in this case. But I think that we probably wouldn't have time on this age for that problem to be solved and America be recognized for his history, because I think that there will be in the next decades either a social crush or a natural crush of some sort. So I think that after that, if we survive, if we survive at least a little bit like in the kind of civilization that we have today, then perhaps we'll be more open because a catastrophe has actually happened and we seen it, and we'll be ready to accept that perhaps there was civilizations before what we consider possible because of these catastrophes. But as things are now, and considering how close the academic community is, unless these patriarchs are all replaced and those young ones that are being accepted don't decide not to follow them, or once they are gone, express themselves more freely, I don't think that that will be possible. Because if you go to a university and you present a thesis about Americans before the Younger Dryas, for instance, you will be completely dismissed and threatened to lose your post, just as simple as that, because you cannot contradict others. It's like judges. I have a friend that became a judge in Portugal, and I I saw a few years before this she starts practicing, and I said, "But that it must be great. You have a case, and you can put your own morality, your own judgment on top of the law, and decide what to do with the case you have." And she told me, "You're wrong. I cannot do that, because I have to go and check if any judge before me had a similar case, and I have to replicate what he decided, because if I do something different, I'm discrediting him, and I will be removed from my post and put in the secretary somewhere dealing with paperwork, although I am a judge just like them." So it's the same thing that happens in academics. It's exactly the same process. You cannot contradict those that are above you. And if you want to grow up, you start, how many times you have to repeat a lie until it becomes a truth? So you, as a disciple of some of these patriarchs that are in universities and have academic posts and so on, you start repeating them because that's what you have to do. And when you reach the point when you replace them, you keep repeating the same things because you will be contradicting yourself for a whole life, a whole career that you had at that point. You see, so it's very hard to contradict this mainstream follow of information that doesn't embark the whole picture. Let's put it that way. And just the last thing before you allowed you to speak. I'm quite fascinated by the fact that you mentioned the Phoenicians, and that they crossed the ocean, because what do you find without being able to place a date on Madeira and the Azores? You find Phoenician anchors, stone anchors of Phoenician boats, and so many that have to be a constant traffic of ships coming up and down to justify the amount of stone anchors that you have on the beaches of these islands. So this is only just started to be shown, but again, BBC did a small piece on video on the megalithic structures of the Madeira and the Azores, showing these anchors, but that's it. I just say, "Oh, I saw an UFO," and let's go to the commercial. And that's it. So there's no more explanation whatsoever. It's lost in time and space. But sorry, I'm taking all the words.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Ricardo. When I listened to you guys, you and Phil, and you guys talking about the sound technologies, I'd never heard that stuff before. I have a few of the sound archaeoacoustic books, and I buy any of that type of stuff, but very interesting work that you were presenting and talking about, I mean, just, as a visual person trying to, in ancient times, and please explain it after, but you can send a sound as a possible weapon, as a possible deterrent, as a possible healing and peace. Just, would you mind sharing
Sure,
that
that's
blew
quite
me
easily,
away that you could, yeah.
That's quite easily to understand, because we are doing it today. We are using sound to heal. We are using sound as a weapon, because even the Soviets tried to use it in their war, and the problem was they couldn't control it, so it affects everyone. That's why they abandoned it, because it creates It creates a bubble of sound, and everyone in it will be affected. What the ancients knew how to do is to put the effect outside of the bubble instead of inside of the bubble. So everyone else outside was affected, but not the ones inside the bubble. You see my point? That's the difference. But we have the same technology today, but they did it with what we today call hypogeums, that are subterranean stone chambers that have a tower on above, normally, as you see in the city of Gore. And that tower can actually create a how do you call the spear that has 3 points? A trident of frequencies that creates not only the bubble that protects the city from the effects of the sound, but also creates the area around it that will affect anyone coming. That's why Alexander the Great couldn't take the ancient city of Gore, because the soldiers were getting mad. They were attacking each other, losing loss of limb control, madness, visions of horror, and they couldn't do it. So they had to flood the whole valley just to take a small little town that had still this technology. But my interest, for instance, is that none of this has been done in the United States. None of it has been done. There is no archaeoacoustics on mounds, on ancient sites. There is none of that being done. So it'd be very interesting to start introducing frequencies to these ancient sites and see what the results would come out.
Well, there's stuff to discuss, Ricardo, in due time. But so one of these sites in the UP, or I'm sorry, Wisconsin, you're supposed to sit at one spot and you look out in the distance, and there's just hundreds of mounds in the shapes of all eagles. These are eagles, big eagle earthen mounds. And they're even tilted just so, like, they're meant to be seen in motion. So you're meant to sit here and you see that eagle kind of in flight. So I would just be blown away by you and your team trying to find some connection, if sound at all of these effigies, if there's some sound factor there. That would be groundbreaking research.
Well, I can assure you that when you find pictograms or rock art or rock paintings or effigies, as you were describing, those massive depictions of anthropomorphic figures or animal figures, those are the markers that is the active place for the sound. Because if you can sit on that chair that you are describing, seeing all other mounts, then I'm sure that you can communicate with all other mounts from where you are. So, for instance, let me explain this. If you go to Spain, for instance, and it also happened in France, they have these massive cliffs with a large prayer in front of it. And in this cliff, about 40, 50 meters high, you have many dimples and carved small circular areas that were carved on these structures. But there's only pictograms and drawings on some of them. And it happens that only those that have the pictograms or the drawings are actually functional. The others are failed jobs. So they use these sites, these concavities on the rock, to communicate up to 12 kilometers. So they speak to these sites, and the sound goes reverberated through the whole area and can be listened for the person that is far away. For instance, if someone is in trouble beyond the horizon of the prayer, he need but to direct himself to the place, speak, and the person that is seated on that concavity will hear is asking for help. And you cannot hear it on the ground, but if you are seated on the concavity of the cliff, you will hear the person. Wow. You can see it, but you will hear it. Only there you can hear it. It's only on that spot that you can hear it. So I believe that those sites in the United States, and when you talk to me about a sitting place, I immediately imagine that it has to have a significance, and it has a significance. It has a purpose. It has a purpose. It has an intentionality, and was built specific for that purpose. So that's why it would be important to see what can be done there.
Do you think that there's any chance that a friend of mine, basically the high points of all these mountains across America, that you're sending signals in a matter of minutes or at the latest hours across almost the whole country, but
Sure.
no problem from Ohio to Plymouth, no problem, minutes. So could that have been sound, or is it probably just the mica, the obsidian, and the fires at night? Is that just kind of an easier way to send a message than sound could be?
I think when the technology was lost, they were reverted to use fire and the stone.
Mm.
Because I think that the first source was sound. But like in the legend of Arthur and Merlin that went looking for the Grail is technological, it's not physical. So they were looking for the technology to heal the land and use it. And that is the technology of the stone. So that's why you find those massive fields in France with monoliths on the ground. That's why you find dolmens, tolos, cairns. That's why you find all these mounds, all these structures, because they were devices of reproducing these kind of energies, and they were specifically placed, specifically aligned with specific mineralogy, meaning specific quartz content on the stone. So all this was then activated by the final ingredient, that is sound. Of course, that you have to check if these places have underwater ways or if there is a river nearby, because that's the key for the activation. It always have to have the element water. If there is the element water, you'll find it. Most of all, another sign, if you find one of those mounds that has all these signs, but is on a riverbed, that will be a strong energy point, because all these principal sites are on riverbeds, and this I learned from Phil. Water. If you have all these ingredients, you introduce sound, and you'll get a result.
Well, yeah. It's just big stuff, Ricardo. So,
can you enter those mounds?
In North America, enter the mounds, the effigies, the low animal-shaped. Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with so many have been destroyed, so you're dealing with what's left, and so you have the drawings from the 1800s when these, but there are still some all over. But just trying to figure this out. So. I guess, Ricardo, I would ask you, one thing I'm trying to figure out before I die, and maybe you can help me answer it right here, is all these standing stones, these megaliths, these dolmens, the quartz that's weaved into them. Just, will you teach me what you think was going on with all that?
Well, I think there was many purpose to many different sites, and not all of them was for the same thing. I think that some of the mounds that we can find might actually be only just a place for the dead, because the technology was lost. And since there was these creepy emotions, because once you leave a place like this idle, and with the opening, with the doorways open before they're closed, if you go there and you have the luck or the bad luck of the wind coming from the precise point, when it's funneled within these structures, it creates that bottle effect of sound, and it can compress the waves until they become a standing wave just by the wind. And if you got, for instance, if you are at 4 hertz as ambient sound that you cannot hear because it's infrasound, but it can affect you. So 4 hertz will give you the sensation of bliss, of contact with the divine, of feeling the connection of something higher than you. And this is seen in lab and on site. You just have to introduce that frequency. But if you compress those same 4 hertz into a standing wave, then you turn it into a weapon, and you become virtually insane while you're under the effect, because your brain starts showing you those images of terror. Your worst fears manifest in front of you. You have loss of limb control. You may have internal convulsions. So it all depends from person to person, but it's not pleasant. I assure you, it's not pleasant. You have the case of the 2 Vikings in Newgrange that took shelter there during a storm, and they both got mad, completely insane. They never recovered. And we are talking about the bravest people that were fearless. So they were faced with their own fears, most likely, and their brain broke from the fact that they couldn't stand the fear of what they're being introduced to them by the sound of the wind entering the structure. So what I was asking is, do you find any of the mounds that you visit, is any one of them still with a visible entry that we can go into them?
I don't know. I don't know that answer. I don't. Nothing's. I don't see them as the entrances, like the ones in France or Spain, or where you have a doorway or which connects. I don't think you go into them. I don't think so. You go to some of these places, like in West Virginia, in all the mountaintops. There's stuff everywhere, all of them. And you go up to the rock shelters and the bluffs, and Ricardo, stuff is it's buried up there. It's like, so that you have all these caves and caverns and rock shelters, and you look at the bottom of it, and it's, whether it's a plaster, a conglomerate, big boulders blocking cave entrances, but these entrances are blocked. And so, the conventional answer is, oh, those rocks fell down from the block shelter, and rock shelter, and blocked this cave entrance. So, yeah, I don't know about entrances to the mounds, but I like that you'd want to go inside of them and do testing. There's obviously stone mounds and earth mounds, so that's it.
Yeah, but my point is, for instance, can you see the screen? The mound that I'm placing on the screen? So this is a mound that is very close to me. And for 50 years, there's high people with money that are trying to build an airport here. And so they made a 12,000-page document about the area with about 200 pages dedicated to this site and why you cannot do anything on this site. And so all of this has been done because there is a higher echelon that doesn't allow even millionaires to work and take down this mount. And the explanation that they give us is that there is high levels of concentrated toxic gas inside the mound. So you cannot excavate it, you cannot contain it, you cannot touch the mound. But I'm pretty sure that the mound is, first of all, not natural, and second of all, that has structures inside, because that's what these people did. So it doesn't matter if it is covered with earth or is with the stone on site.
Mm-hmm.
My point is, if there is anyone, because I haven't found a single one that we can say that was the entrance, you see? So I was wondering if you ever seen a mound that still had the entrance for us to go and check what is beneath it.
That's great. Great question. I think that those get covered up, have been covered up a lot of the times, and that even some of these Native Americans I talked to, they don't know where the entrance is. They know it's there to go to, not as much the above ground mound,
but below.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They know there's caves, they know there's stuff there, but they can't figure out how to get into it.
Sure. And I think that's where the real treasure, and treasure, I don't mean money, but information or some sort of technology would be underground these mounds, and using these mounds as natural pyramids. You see, instead of building a whole pyramid with stones, if you don't have that ability, or perhaps previously was done like this, or just a different culture or different way to do it, I don't know. But I think the purpose would not be that different, and they are not places for the dead. I think they were places for the living, for initiations, for healing, for mystic experiences. Because if you add psychedelics, as the Native American people are so used to, at least from the shamans, if you use psychedelics inside a site that has acoustic properties, you will enhance that, and you will need someone that is very brave and capable of mind to deal with the intensity of what we are about to experience. So, and that still happens today on the sites on this side of the ocean. So You have the case of Newgrange that I'm sure you listened to what we have described before, where after introducing 480 bits per minute, that they even this is hidden, because what's in the paper is 8 bits, around 8 bits per second. So 8 bits per second, when you try to convert it, there's nowhere to convert that. So it's like saying in your face, but hiding the information at the same time, because you can't go to YouTube and put 8 bits per second. So I have to calculate how many 8 bits per second are, and they are 480 bits per minute. So then you can go to YouTube and put 480 bits per minute and see what was the frequency that created the reverberation inside the structure or the functionality. And this time, the functionality was on the first chamber to the left. They placed a child of 14 years old, and they start introducing the sound from the forecourt, because they tried on the inside and it didn't work. So they decided to put the sound on the outside and see if it works. And the stones are semicircular and conduce the sound inwards. So what happened was that this child that was in complete darkness, started to see the stone started to glow at first on that chamber alone. The chamber started to vibrate and to glow slightly, and then a small black circle appeared on the side of the chamber where there is nothing on the other side, nothing, just land. And a circle appeared and another room opened. So you had sound created a passage to another room, and the boy was scared and closed his eyes. And when he closed his eyes, he describes that for 2 times he felt a presence coming from the other room into his room, circled him and went back, since the boy, you respect the boy, as we can describe it. So if you are still with your eyes closed, if you're not, don't want, it's typical shaman behavior. You don't want anything from me, I will not be the one to approach you. So I'm just as curious of you being here as you are frightened of being here. So he came twice, there's no response, he returned, and the experience terminated. And so this is all recorded in an academic paper of the study of the site. And the problem is this is all taken as, yeah, it's magnificent, let's go to the commercials. There was no one to take lead on this and say, wait, what did the boy see? An opening? Okay, let's replicate that. Let's do it again. Let's put cameras in here. Let's put night vision. Let's capture microphone. Let's see if the chamber really opens or it's like an OBE experience. And if it is an out-of-body experience, let's put someone that understands OBE, and let's see if he can actually raise from his body, go to the other chamber and see what he can learn. See what experience comes from this. And nothing of this is done. And that's exactly what we want to be doing. That's why I'm asking you if there's any entrance, because it'd be great to try and find out in an uncontrolled environment by the academics to see, because I don't see any academics go around these mounts. They just don't care about them for sure. There might be some natives that don't allow us to go there and mess with the sacred ground, of course. But I think it's on their own interest to revive these sites.
Supposedly they want to share this information, that the Native Americans kids are now using their iPhones and they don't even care about the stories.
Sure.
So they're ready to share. It's just, Ricardo, it's like, how far back you're talking about, like, who were those people?
Sure.
I don't think about it too much, but it is fun to, I don't know. What do you think?
Look, there was some 20 years ago a disclosure project that was called Project Avalon, if I'm not mistaken, and they managed to secure a meeting with the Hopi. The problem is that interview is great, although we don't learn much because he was very tight to his knowledge, but he spoke a few things, gave good counsel. The problem is, after that, people saw they could make money. And so the message of the Hopi that I've been seeing passed on as official from that point on is barely a commercial compared to what they actually have to teach us or to tell us about their history and their ancestors. So I think it is corrupted now. So it's very hard, unless you know personally someone you can talk to and learn from them, It's not going to be by YouTube videos of the Hopi or whatever tribe it is that
Yeah.
you are going to learn something essential.
Well, so that's the Hopi, and I haven't talked to them yet. So that's super interesting and good information. The
This is the same for anyone, for any other tribe. I just gave this example, but
yes, yes, and I just didn't know that, so that's good to know. But they, you know, they they deal with at least the tribes that I've spoken to, a few of them, they deal with the elder system, right? Where, like one tribe in particular, there's I think 13 elders that run this tribe, and it's the oldest person from each of the clans, so the oldest person is the most respected of each clan. And that's so when you want something, when you want to say, hey, is it okay for me to share information with this, this guy coming out? You go to the elders and you ask them if it's okay. And then they all say yes. So that's kind of a cool
why
system.
13? Why 13?
I think, I'm so sorry. I think it was 13. It might have been 12. Forgive me, but good question. I don't know.
But you don't know why the reason of the number. Okay, I just found it funny to be 13 or 12, because it's recurrent in mythology, and it's all the council of the 12 or the 13, or it's always the same number. That's why I find it curious.
Well, I'll follow up with you on that.
So you think that these people are willing to talk in a controlled environment by themselves?
Yeah, they've gotten permission from the elders to share information. Now is the time, the seventh fire, the rainbow warriors, and that's what you and I would be. That their kids don't care anymore. They care about the iPhone, and so but just something about North America is just the big secret, and that's interesting. So but they don't know a lot. And so I mean, I don't know where I want to go. We'll just see what happens. But you have all these tribes that lay claim to all these burials. And they say, don't show a picture of my grandmother. Well, you don't know. That's not your grandmother. And it's, in all certainty, it's nothing to do with your,
Sure.
tribe or lineage, but you're laying claim to the whole area like these are my grandparents. So, you're really going back to who are these actual people that are buried in these mounds, and it doesn't seem to be that it's the modern day people that lay claim to it and who get all of the artifacts from the. So we talked to one of the guys at the Smithsonian that's basically a Native American lawyer, one of the head guys there, and he has spearheaded the campaign to return all the artifacts to all the tribes. And so that's great. Obviously, that's a conversation to have, and I understand their side, and I understand all sides, and how everybody donated artifacts to, Ohio, but they're the Ohio Historical Connection then takes those artifacts and gives them away to the tribes, so it's like there's all different conversations there, but who lays claim to things now is not probably who was there. So that's interesting. That's part of the story. It's just true.
Yeah, because when you look to Australia and you go to the Aborigines, there's no big doubt that they are somewhat descendants of the first inhabitants, because they have a different morphology. Their skeleton is slightly different to ours. So it's easy to see that they belong with a great ancestry. And when you look to Native Americans, you see a people that has traits of several people that probably are not exactly what was before. So the cultures have mingled, or from all those expeditions that you told, from the Phoenicians, from the Chinese, from and other people that got there, there is some mingling happened, and perhaps their culture was morphing, changing. Perhaps the cataclysm changed their DNA sequence, let's call it that. But yes, I agree with you. I don't think that the current Native Americans can claim much further than perhaps 7, 8, or 9, 10,000 years old.
Yeah, and you're dealing with Cherokees and different groups that kind of came in. So the Phoenicians, these are seaport. These are 300 seaports along the Atlantic of Africa. 300 seaports. So these people are a mix of people. It's not Phoenicians like Semites, anti-Semites,
Sure,
Semites. Like,
sure.
yeah, it's a mix of people, and they then go and breed with everybody. And so yeah, some interesting. The Kennewick Man was a very interesting case. Jim Chatters is a friend of ours. He's just thrown under the bus for his work as an archaeologist. Like, they don't treat people well that go outside of the norm. So a story I really quickly want to say is Henriette Mertz, and she wrote 4 books. One of them was that Atlantis was in the Appalachian Mountains type thing. But she wrote a book called The Mystic Symbol, which was published posthumously, because she knew what that would do to her. And so she was a retired naval attorney, and she was hired by a judge, and she was told, I want you to prove that these Michigan tablets, the Sofer Savage tablets, are real or not real. Just use your stuff, the judge said. And so she publishes The Mystic Symbol in 1987 posthumously, proving that you cannot for sure say these are fake. What a great 5th book to do. Just, you cannot for sure say that. So that's just kind of fun. And the phrase is ipsit dippic. I do what my superiors say. I do as I'm told. So go ahead. Sorry.
I just found an image of Phoenicians dressed as they would be in the year 1000. I think it's the label of the image. Let me see if I can share it. And I think there's a little bit of some native people you can see in their clothes, in their morphology Beautiful. Of the faces. So, and this is Phoenicians, not Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why I'm saying that there's many, this is just an example. There's many ways to show that Native Americans, although they have a very ancient history, perhaps longer than most countries that exist now, much longer than that, because for instance, Portugal is an old country and exists from the year 1000, 1050. So to go back.
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. So that's all right. No, please. Anything to continue?
So I was just saying that Native Americans either came from intermingling with North and South American peoples, because I think they all connected, even if just for trade routes. But they are the oldest before the Americans, that's for sure. So, but you say that they lost the knowledge of the previous technology that they might have.
Well, these earthen mounds in Wisconsin and Minnesota, Michigan, there's something very special with them. The soil is not local soil. This soil is multicolors, and it's been brought around from all over. And so Cahokia, the story is it's got 6 or 7 different colors on the outer layer. And it's, all precise meanings for that, and perhaps sound associated. And, so these are very special mounds with the multicolored soils. I'm trying to get to the bottom of that too, but Effigy Mounds National Monument in Iowa is part of that. But yeah, some connection back to Mother Earth. The Mayan shaman taught us that, Mother Earth, literally, you channel her in these places of high energy, you channel her and she comes out and she is literally present, that it's a literally a real
And where do they
entity that
say
you
they,
can go to.
and where do they say they appear?
You've got to be on these special sites.
Yeah, but my point is, does she appear from a wall? Is like an holographic image? Is they describe it as being a projection of the mind? How do they claim it is?
I think it was all those. I don't. Great question. I'll get back to you on that. But it was through the voice, but it was also through the thoughts. But it was, the this is totally separate. But the black mirror, that, which is what our iPhone is. But that something may appear there on the mirror. So a little different than what you asked. But I need to answer. I'll get that answer.
I was asking this because, for instance, when you imagine what a sarsen stone is, you have heard the term sarsen stone. So this term is just to mislead us, because a sarsen stone is not a stone. A sarsen stone is chemically 99.3 to 99.8 pure crystal. So only up to 0.7 of impurities, that might be iron and some other smaller particles of minerals, but is the most pure crystal that you can create. And we're talking about crystals with tons in weight. So if you put these together in places that are specifically chosen by the artilleric energies, you align this site to the elements, you construct them following sacred geometry that the Indians were not supposed to know. And if you use all this, but they've proven they know, because we have several structures that show us that they understand not only the sky, but the earth alone also. So if you join all this and you introduce the sounds to a structure that is made to convey a message, there's nothing stopping you from having either a mental state that creates a holographic image, the perception there is something coming out of the stone telling you this, because the stone is tuned to give you exactly that information. And we are doing this today technologically. We are learning how to store information in crystals. So, and they can project that information, as you see in sci-fi movies then. So I'm not dismissing at all the chance that what these mystics and these shamans are telling you is absolutely correct. But can they still do it today? Or this is how it was? They still do it today?
Yes.
And
yes.
How is the ceremony performed? Do you know?
No, but we'll get these answers. It's all recorded, and no, but I will get you those answers. So
you see my point? It's interesting to know if they use music, chanting, if they carry some sort of crystals, obsidian with them, if they have some sort of safe catch in order to, if things go wrong, they can use that to recover their mental state and remove themselves from the scene. What is actually done for these ceremonies in order to make that lady appear?
Very good. We'll get to that. I did hear they liked jade around the heart, right? So that was cool.
But it might be to protect the heart from those energies, you see.
I love that, Ricardo. Yes. And the sarsen stones, when I learned that from you, I was blown away by that. I mean, it's a big deal.
Yeah, anyone can research it. Just write composition of a sarsen stone. It's not hidden. It's just not looked. It's just a sarsen stone.
So why would you these?
Yeah. Go on. I was just saying, why you take 300 kilometers to fetch a stone if it's just a stone? And when you find out they traveled 300 kilometers to get a stone that is a sarsen stone, then you start to think, well, that has to be a purpose. Otherwise, you wouldn't take 300 kilometers without the wheel dragging a stone just to place it there because you find it pretty. It doesn't make any sense. It has to have a purpose, intention. Sorry, go on.
Well, you suggested that they could be flown in the air. That's I know that puts us right over the edge on believability. But I loved that image, that is possible, that they could be flown across the
It,
sky. I
it,
know that's crazy, but
it's not flown across the sky. It's just that if you find the specific vibration of any object, you can make it impervious to gravity or any physical strength. So this is made in by well, they started doing this with extremely cold, extremely conductive metals that they can place them floating atop a magnetic surface without touching anything, and you change the disk and it remains exactly on that position. Now they are doing it without the cold. They are already doing it without the cold. Now, if you can do that to a stone by using some sort of metron, by knowing or scoping the stone exactly to vibrate to that point, you can not only make the stone malleable, as you do to a glass when you subject it to sound. If you check before it vibrates, exactly before it breaks, it reaches a point that it's not studied. And that point is when the glass becomes plastic. Plastic in the meaning of it's completely malleable at that state. Okay. So it's like in the process when it's being heated and you can shape the glass. If you put it to that vibrational state, you can mold the glass without breaking it. So everything has a point that can be used by vibration, and vibration means frequency, and frequency means sound. Either you can hear it or not. So so just to clarify that I'm not saying stones flying through the air. I'm just saying that if you manage to vibrate if you manage to vibrate an object to a specific frequency that has to be found, you can make it to float and you can carry it without any weight because he's in a vibrational state that breaks all those laws.
That's beautiful. Thank you. These effigy mounds up in Wisconsin, Michigan, and stuff. There's in these piles of rocks, big, some burials, but also in the shapes of animals. You definitely have quartz in special rocks atop these mounds. Rocks with quartz veins in them, right?
Sure.
And so, trying to figure out, what that would be. But why you'd have a kind of like quartz veined rock at the top of a stone mound or something.
Have you found any of those structures that are somewhat hollow?
Great question. I don't know that answer. I'll find out.
My purpose is this: these people not only had the technology, as they were kind of practical jokers. Let's put it this way, because if you have a face, a mountain shaped as a face that is pointing in one direction, and you have a niche or something like that on the stone beneath it, perhaps if you introduce sound or vibration into it, the sound will come out from the face itself, depending on how it is structured inside. Now, if it is a complete block of stone, it's just a marker for the site. But if you find niches, if you find places that are like dimples, they can work as speakers, as in the Tarxian temple, where you have a large corridor of orthostats that have dimples in them. And when you put the hand inside the dimple, you feel like the woofer of your speaker, of your stereo at home, vibrating the air into your hand. So try to look for those things when you go to those sites. Put your hand on the dimples, put water. If you have vertical dimples, put water in them and see if they are vibrating somehow, or if you stuck the stone, what kind of shapes you obtain from the circles in the water, because most of these concave structures were just like for instance, in churches, most people believe that the baptizal basins are for baptizing. Many of them are, but those are placed in the center or in specific places of the church that are not close to a wall, but inside the church, in the middle of a corridor or something like that, was to put water in them. And then with the organ functioning, you can check by the water, that today is called kymatics. You can check if you are using the correct vibration. So instead of having to memorizing this or that frequency, you just have to memorize the patron, that's a specific, how do you say it, patron in English? Pattern, the specific pattern of the circles on the basin, because the whole structure is reverberating to that frequency. And so that produces an effect on the water. You see a specific image on the water. It's called cymatics. It's done, many people are doing it, but that's what was done on the churches. So the basin was not for baptizing, but was checking that you are using the correct frequencies, like a tune-up for the structure. So, and this is much older technology. That's why you see so many dimples in ancient sites, both in North America and South America. There's lots of dimples in structures. So if you live in a place that has large seismic activity, if you have a dimple and you put someone on that dimple with water in it, you'll check the vibrations of the area before the earthquake. You see my point? So there's many things that can be used with this kind of technology.
Well, what comes to mind is seed of knowledge, stone of plenty.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you take your seeds in South America and you put them on top of the 100,000 Guatemalan pyramids, little small pyramids. And then those seeds are supercharged when you bring them back to your farm, right?
Sure.
You opened me up a lot to sound. It's very new to me, and it's extremely important. I was blown away at one of those auditoriums in Greece or wherever where the sound shoots across. You know, you knock here and it's shooting across the entire length of
Sure.
And the other one is the South American pyramids, where it's making the sound of the bird and stuff like that.
Yes.
Clap.
But that's just the show off part of the technology. Because if you can do that with stairs, what can you do in the inside with the same technology? Do you see my point? That's just it's like the emblem on the car. If you take the emblem of a Mercedes today, you will know that is a Mercedes because they all look the same. But it's like the part that shows we were here. This is our technology because you can hear it. Look, it's our job. It's done. You see it. It's working. It's tuned. It's perfectly sound. So it means the technology is still there. It's still active, and it still can be used. So at least that's my take.
Well, you're doing outstanding work, Ricardo. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, it has been. Indeed. So I thank you very much for staying with us.
Yes.
It was an immense pleasure to have you here and to talk to you finally and meet you in person. So it was absolutely amazing.
All right. Well, I'm so humbled to be friends with you, Ricardo, and your work. So
sure.